Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're talking about two iconic off-roading SUVs. We have the Land Rover Defender and the Ford Bronco. Now both of these were introduced years and years ago, and in the last few years, both Land Rover and Ford have reintroduced both of these SUVs for the modern era, and they both have some fantastic off-road and on-road capabilities. And that's what we're going to go over in today's video. We'll talk about all the features that both of these SUVs have, as well as getting them out on the road and even throwing in some off-roading clips, as we've been able to take both the Land Rover Defender and the Ford Bronco off the pavement to really see how capable they are. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let's get into it. We're going to start off today's comparison with the Land Rover Defender. Now there are three different engine options available. The model here in this video has the 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo. There's also a V6 and a V8. This is paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission. It pumps out 296 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. That's paired through the full-time 4-wheel drive system. It weighs in around 4,500 pounds. It'll do 0 to 60 in 6.7 seconds with a top speed of 119 miles an hour. And it has a fuel capacity of 19.8 gallons. You'll expect to see around 18 miles per gallon in the city, 22 out on the highway. Now this has a wheelbase of 101.9 inches and an overall length of 180.4. Its maximum ground clearance is 11.5 inches, and it also has an approach angle of 31.5 degrees, a breakover angle of 37.5, a departure angle of 24.2, and it can ford through 35.4 inches of water. Now as we move over to the Bronco now, the model in today's video has the 2.7 liter EcoBoost V6, which is the smallest engine available. There's also a 3.5 liter V6 and then the Raptor R, which is on the way with the big V8. This is paired to a 10-speed automatic, pumps out 310 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. Now this is only rear-wheel drive, however it does have a 4-wheel drive system. It weighs in right around 5,000 pounds. It'll do 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds with a top speed of 130, and its fuel capacity is 20.8 gallons. You'll expect to see around 20 miles per gallon in the city, 22 out on the highway. Its wheelbase is 100.4 inches. The overall length is 173. It has ground clearance of 11.5 inches, and its approach angle is 43.2 degrees. Its breakover angle is 29 degrees with a 37-degree departure angle, and it can ford through 33.5 inches of water. Now let's start off with the exterior design for this Land Rover Defender. It has a very unique design to it, especially when you compare it to the Ford Bronco. Now right in the middle is a brush trim piece with the Land Rover badge. This has a forward-facing camera, all the parking sensors too, which you'll see are very helpful for off the pavement. This has LED headlights, DRLs, and turn signals with a really distinctive design. And this model also has LED fog lights and a ton of cutouts to provide more cooling and aerodynamics for this. As you can tell up on the hood, there's even some trim pieces running down both sides, and they are pretty much in line with the tires. So that way when you're off the pavement, you can easily place the passenger side, which is great for better visibility in those tighter situations, as well as giving it a cool look. And then moving on to the Ford Bronco now, we're going to start off with the hood because it has those same trim pieces on both sides. However, these are vinyl instead of an actual plastic, so it's a cool graphics package. Now this is the first edition, which gives you those graphics on both sides. And then there's even the bump stops on both sides of the hood, where you could attach a wire to it up to the windshield, so that way any trees are coming in your way on the trails, they will hit those, and instead of hitting the paint, they will just brush off to the side. It's a cool design. Those are also very helpful for taking this off-road. You can easily spot the front tires as well. And then this front end design is very iconic. It's in a modern design for the original Ford Bronco. I love how Bronco is spelled out right in the middle of the grille, where this even has a forward-facing camera just like on the Land Rover Defender. There's parking sensors running throughout the steel bumper. The Ford Bronco is a lot more off-road focused than the Land Rover as far as the exterior mods that you can do. This model even has the LED lighting package, so LED DRLs, turn signals, and the headlights. But going back to that steel bumper, there are a lot of modifications that you can do. That is why the approach angle is so much higher than on the Defender. All of the cutouts, as you can see, You can even see right through to the tire. So it's a lot more versatile. You can take this bumper apart if you need a little bit more ground clearance. Now, as we move on to the side design now for the Defender, this is more of a base model. It has a lot of technology, as you'll see, but for the wheels, they are pretty simple. There's a trim piece just behind the front tire that is functional, which is great to see. This model even has cameras in the side mirrors, so I'll show that 360 camera system. This particular model also has a cargo box on the side, which is an option, along with the roof rack, and there's even a ladder over on the driver's side. So this is more designed for overlanding. You can put a rooftop tent on this, you have cargo area for accessories, anything that you may have. While this is a hardcore off-roader, it is designed more for being an overlandish type of vehicle where you have all those mods. Now, over on the Ford Bronco, the first edition gives you these large wheels and tires, which just gives you that much more ground clearance. As you can tell with the fender flares too, they poke out a good bit to accommodate these 35-inch tires. I think that's fantastic that Ford offers large wheels and tires for this model, so that way you don't have to do that afterwards. You can buy it as is, which is of course great. Now, as you can tell in the lower section of the door is more of that vinyl, being the first edition. This even has a camera system on the side mirrors. Again, I'll show that later. The biggest difference between the Ford Bronco and the Land Rover Defender is the fact that you can actually take the roof off of this vehicle. You can take the doors off as well, which is a really cool option if that's something that you're looking to do. And then moving on to the Defender now, this has the full-size spare. The brake light is just above the rear glass. Wiper blade is hidden, so it gives you a lot of visibility. This has a backup camera, which is located underneath the spare, still giving you a lot of visibility. However, there's also a camera in the shark fin on the roof that is associated with the rear view mirror to give you even more visibility. All the parking sensors are located throughout that bumper too, and it just has a great boxy-ish design to it for this rear end. And then over on the Bronco, same design with that full-size spare. However, the backup camera is integrated right in the middle of that wheel. The brake light is just above the spare tire instead of being up on the top, and the wiper blade is still in the same position. All the parking sensors are in that steel bumper too. And I forgot to mention towing. On the Land Rover Defender, that's around 7,700 pounds. Over on the Ford Bronco, it is closer to 3,500 pounds. Now, as we move on to the rear cargo space, they both offer the swing gate with that strut there to make it easier to open and close with that full-size spare. On the Defender, there's a good amount of storage space in the back side of the door. You can throw in your tow straps, any other equipment that you may have. There's even a grab handle too. Now, being the two-door model, this is a 5-seater. You still have a good amount of space behind that back seat when it is up. You can put a backpack, some smaller items. It's definitely going to be more practical with them folded down to give you extra storage. But if you need to throw people in the back, you can make it work and you still have a good amount of space. And then up underneath the floor is a little bit more storage. You have all of your toolkits and everything like that. Over on the Ford Bronco, it has the same design with that swing out tailgate, except you can actually lock and unlock it from that handle, which the Land Rover Defender lacks. Now, there's a split design for the Bronco, so you do have to open up the rear window individually. And as you can tell, there is a lot more storage space behind the back seats. However, the Ford Bronco is only a 4-seater, so it is a smaller vehicle, but you do get a little bit more ample room with the back seats up, a little bit more hidden storage, as well as all of the toolkits like you saw on the Defender. You can even use this as a cooler, throw in wet items because it has that drain plug. Now, as we move on to the driver interior for the Land Rover Defender, I love that everything is exposed. It pays homage to the original Land Rover Defender with all these screws. This has great materials that will withstand going off-road, getting dirty. It's going to be easy to clean, but at the same time too, it's very luxurious. This has the Meridian sound system, blind spot as you can tell, a little bit of storage space in the lower section of the door, and I love how nicely it all comes together with that same material in the top section. Leather is covering the entire seat, giving it a really nice design. You can get heated and ventilated seats for this as well. Over on the Bronco now, door panels a little bit more modern, I would say. More materials like the leather. First edition has that body color. There's some brushed aluminum trim pieces. And there's a storage net in the lower section of the door. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you can remove these doors, which is why there's not a whole lot of storage. There's no speakers in the door either since they are removable. So it's a little bit more simple, but you do gain the fact of taking the doors off. This model has leather seats, Bronco badge right in the middle. They are heated and ventilated too with a two-tone design. So it does have the nice amenities to it. Even though there are some simplicities, these seats are also manual adjusting too. They are power operated over on the Defender. And then as we move on to the back seats now, like I mentioned earlier, the Defender is a 5-seater. So there's a lot of space for the second row. You can have 3 people back here very comfortably, and this even has all of the climate adjustments, so that way you can be a lot more comfortable. There's a lot of auxiliaries where you can charge your electronics. So this is a very practical and usable two-door vehicle with the amount of backseat storage that you have, as well as being able to put people. And I love the fact that this has these Safari windows, which provides a lot more light, especially for your backseat passengers. This has the full moonroof too. So it has a very open feel to it, which is great to see. And then for the Bronco, like I mentioned earlier, this is only a 4-seater, so it is much smaller than the Defender. There's a little bit of space in the back. I'm 5'10" just for reference, and I had plenty of room even in the Bronco. I had a lot more room in the Defender. There's only auxiliaries for your backseat passengers, so there's no climate adjustments in the back row for the Bronco, but it feels very open too, plenty of headroom. As you can tell from this angle, look at how wide all of the glass is. So it provides a lot of light. There's no sunroof or moonroof because you can take the roof completely off. Now, as we talk about technology, starting off with the Defender, this has a digital gauge cluster. You can go through a lot of information. There's a few different layouts just depending on what you'd like to see. If you have the navigation up, you can pull that in full screen or minimize it, go through some other info. You can look at your heads-up display, music, phone, all of that information, which is pretty standard for digital gauge clusters today. Now over on the Bronco, it has a split style with a large digital screen and then the analog speedometer on that left side. You can go through pretty much the same information. There's some off-road settings that you can pull up too. Same with the Defender, just in a little bit different of an orientation, which is why I'm showing it on the Bronco. It's a much larger screen. To go through that information, you can configure it as needed, which is very helpful. Go through all of those vitals just depending on what you'd like to see. Now for the center infotainment system on this particular Defender, this is actually the smaller screen. We had a V8 Defender for a week, which had the updated and larger screen, but even with this smaller screen, still provides you plenty of information. You can go through all of this, as you can tell on the home screen, and then there's also shortcuts on the left side of the screen to further go through info. This has that 3D camera system, which is incredibly helpful. As you'll see later taking this off-road, the camera system does a fantastic job seeing everything that is around this vehicle. Now the center infotainment system on the Bronco is much larger. It's very usable too. I love the orientation of everything and the split screen that it has. Ford is using this screen on a lot of their models now, where you can go through info on the left, go through info on the right, and still be able to see what you need to see for the day. And there's some more features like the zone lighting, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto that you can go through on the Bronco. So it has a great layout to it. And like I mentioned earlier, same 360 camera system, a little bit different of an orientation compared to the Land Rover Defender, but it gives you plenty of visibility, especially when you're hitting those trails, to see everything around you, which is of course great to have. If you don't have a spotter, you have these different camera angles, which is great. And then talking briefly about the different driving modes for the Land Rover Defender, as you can tell, there are 4 different modes for off the pavement and 2 different modes for on the pavement. So just depending on how you're driving this, you can go through all those different driving modes. Over on the Ford Bronco, this has the GOAT modes, which stands for goes over any terrain, and you can use that rotary dial to further go through all those different driving modes, and they will vary depending on the trim level of the Bronco that you get. So some will have extra modes and some will have fewer modes, just depending on that trim level. Now in the center area for the Defender, this has a wireless charging port. You can even opt for a cooler in the center console. This model does not have it, but you can get the optional cooler, which is great to have. We actually used that for the week we had the Defender. And then the glove box gives you a little bit more storage space. So I like the layout for this interior. And then behind that, there's also the window control, since you can take the doors off, and a good amount of storage. There's no option for a cooler in the middle, but you do have a good amount of space, and then same with the glove box for all of that information. And now to touch briefly on the off-road performance for both the Land Rover Defender and the Ford Bronco. Now this Defender that you see in this video is the V8 model that we had for a week. So if you want to see some more videos on this particular model, check out all of those videos. We were actually able to take this off-road by ourselves and really experience what this is like off-road. Now this V8 model had the adaptive suspension, meaning that it could raise up to 15 inches of ground clearance, well over the model that you see in today's video, and it gave us an ample amount of ground clearance to be able to do obstacles like this. Now on camera, it's not going to look as severe as it did in person. This was a very, very steep incline, and this Land Rover Defender walked it with ease, even with these stock tires. Very impressive to see. For this two-door model, it was a lot of fun to take off the pavement. For the Ford Bronco, we were down in Texas for the Bronco Off-Rodeo event, where we got to take both the two-door and the four-door off-road. One thing with the two-door and the shorter wheelbase is the fact that the tires will get off the ground a little bit more than they will with the four-door version. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both of them. But with the two-door models, they still did obstacles like this with ease. As you can tell right now with that articulation, the wheel getting off slightly, it climbed these like it was nothing. This Bronco is pretty much going straight up that obstacle, and then even with this slight incline, getting a tire just off the ground, they definitely did a great job. So I love the off-road performance, and we were able to test these. It is very impressive for both the Ford Bronco and for the Land Rover Defender. But now let's test their on-road performance. But with this out on the road, it drives very, very smooth. I am thoroughly impressed with this interior amount of space as well. For only having two doors, this is very spacious. 5 people could easily be on the inside of this. Very quiet and comfortable. I could see this being a great daily driver, and you sit so high up. We do have an adjustment on the side where I can lower the seat if I need to, and we'll give it a little bit of gas now. It gets up and moves. It's pretty cool to see that there are 3 different engine options for this Defender, and with the engine that this model has, its towing is very, very surprising. For the short wheelbase, if you look on Land Rover's website, the 2-liter can tow around 7,700. We have the 3-liter, which is close to 8,000, and then the 5-liter V8 is well over 8,000 pounds. That is very, very impressive. If you need a smaller vehicle like this, you're not sacrificing anything for towing, for off-road. And for it being an SUV like this, it's pretty tall. It took that turn with ease, going the speed that I was going, and we can easily get back up and moving. Over the right shoulder, a little bit of a blind spot with that cargo compartment on the side, but that is an option, so you can take that off. Over this left side, I can see out of that window. So visibility is really good. It's so open feeling for how compact this vehicle is. And we'll do one last acceleration for today's video. I am very impressed with how peppy this engine is, and we are up to speed just like that. As you can tell with the two-door, the roof panels take up the entire back area there. So if you are taking them with you, that's pretty much your storage area right there, but you can leave them at home, of course, if you know it's not going to rain. If you want to gamble, it's very enjoyable. You can just see the top of my head there catching some of the wind, but it's very composed in the cab area here. Let's give it a little bit of gas. And we are up to speed just like that. Now you can get a smaller engine. I would personally opt for this larger engine just to have a little bit more power, especially with these 35-inch tires. But we're up to speed and now just cruising with the top on. It's very enjoyable. Even though you can take it off, it really feels pretty insulated. And I like the fact too that we have this extra padding here just to make it a little bit more insulated, keep that wind noise down. And then moving on to the visibility, for the shorter wheelbase here, you pretty much have no blind spots. The rear glass there is very large, so you can look over your left shoulder, look over your right shoulder. All right, so now setting off with the POV angle for the Ford Bronco, you can see what it's like to be behind the wheel. We have that large screen that you can clearly see. But this is a very comfortable SUV to drive. I could see this being a great daily driver just because of how practical it is to drive on the pavement. And then when you want to, you can push a few buttons and take this off-road. You have those different driving modes. But in this cul-de-sac here, with the wheels all the way cranked, hopefully you can get a view at how tight this turning radius is. Just doing a quick donut here. This is very, very tight. So it makes it incredibly maneuverable, which I love to see. So we'll give it one last acceleration for today's video here, just in normal mode. And we are right up to speed. Carries its weight well for weighing around 5,000 pounds or so. And so coming back to the final thoughts between the Land Rover Defender and the Ford Bronco. Now personally, I think both of them are amazing off-road type SUVs that don't sacrifice anything for on-road performance. These are both very smooth on the road. The Land Rover Defender, especially with the adaptive suspension, is on the next level than the Ford Bronco. The Bronco does not offer any suspension setups like that. However, the Bronco has some more off-road tuned suspension compared to the Land Rover Defender, even though it has that adaptive suspension for more ground clearance. So they both have positives and negatives. One positive with the Ford Bronco, it is relatively cheap. You can get into a Ford Bronco in the $30,000 range. The Land Rover Defender is going to be around the $50,000 range, even for the 2-liter 4-cylinder that you saw in today's video. So it's obviously more expensive being a Land Rover versus a Ford, and it just depends on what you like. On the Land Rover Defender, it's a lot more luxurious. There's the heated, ventilated seats. It gives you a really comfortable ride. The Ford Bronco is going to be a little bit more windy. You would expect that, being able to take the roof and the doors off. And it's a little bit more, what I would say, on the sporty side. It's not as luxurious. Yes, you can get some nice materials. You could argue that the Land Rover Defender looks kind of cheap with the exposed screws and all of that. I think it's a great design, but again, positives and negatives to each of them, just depending on what the buyer would like. The Land Rover Defender did incredibly well. We were very impressed off-road with the model that we had. It did have the 22-inch wheels, which is a downside for the V8. It only comes with that, so that's a separate story. But the Ford Bronco, equally as impressive. I will say though, the Land Rover Defender does not have a solid rear axle compared to the Ford Bronco. So that gives you a little bit more ground clearance, not having the rear differential hanging in the back like on the Ford Bronco. So again, positives and negatives, advantages and disadvantages. They are both amazing for both on-road and off-road. Just depends on what you'd like. Comment down below, would you take a Land Rover Defender or the Ford Bronco? I'm torn because I love being able to take the roof and the doors off. You can't do that on the Land Rover Defender, which I wish they offered. That would have been awesome to see. But it's tough for me. One of each, maybe? I don't know. Comment down below. Let me know which one you would take and why. If you enjoyed today's comparison, give it a huge thumbs up. Consider smashing that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on our daily uploads. I will see you all in the next video.